Tensions between the United States and Iran have entered one of the most dangerous and unpredictable phases in modern geopolitical history, with nuclear material now at the center of a high-stakes confrontation that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. The situation has intensified dramatically following a powerful and controversial warning issued by the United States' top defense leadership. Washington has made it clear that Iran's enriched uranium is no longer just a matter of negotiation. It is now a critical security concern that could determine whether diplomacy survives or collapses into renewed conflict. The message delivered was direct and uncompromising. Iran will give the U.S. its enriched uranium, or else the states will take it out, he said. That statement alone has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, signaling a major shift in tone. What was once handled through negotiations and sanctions is now being framed in terms of potential direct action. It suggests that the United States is prepared to escalate beyond traditional diplomatic tools if its demands are not met. This warning comes in the immediate aftermath of a brutal and intense conflict between the United States and Iran that lasted over a month. The war caused widespread destruction, heavy casualties, and severe disruption across the region. After weeks of escalation, both sides agreed to a temporary ceasefire, a fragile two-week pause brokered with the help of international mediators, including Pakistan. Despite this pause, the situation remains extremely volatile. Hostilities have not fully ceased, and tensions continue to simmer beneath the surface. Attacks involving regional actors and proxy groups are still ongoing, highlighting how fragile and uncertain the ceasefire truly is. Both Washington and Tehran have emerged from the conflict claiming victory. The United States has portrayed the outcome as a decisive military success, asserting that Iran's military capabilities have been severely degraded. American officials argue that their objectives were achieved and that Iran has been pushed into a defensive position. Iran, however, presents a completely different narrative. Its leadership insists that the country has preserved its sovereignty and resisted foreign pressure. Officials in Tehran claim that despite the intensity of the attacks, the state remains intact and its strategic position is still strong. This clash of narratives reflects a deeper reality. Neither side has fully achieved its goals. And that unresolved tension is what makes the current moment so dangerous. At the center of this confrontation is Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. For years, the United States has argued that Iran's nuclear program poses a serious risk, fearing that enriched uranium could eventually be used to develop nuclear weapons. Iran has consistently denied this, maintaining that its program is intended for peaceful civilian energy purposes. However, the current crisis has pushed the issue into a new phase. Washington is now demanding that Iran hand over its enriched uranium as part of any long-term agreement. This demand represents a significant escalation as it goes beyond limiting nuclear activity and moves toward removing Iran's nuclear capability entirely. Iran, on the other hand, has shown no willingness to comply with such demands. Officials insist that retaining control over nuclear material is a matter of national sovereignty and security. This fundamental disagreement has created a deadlock, one that is increasingly difficult to resolve through diplomacy alone. Behind the scenes, the United States has begun considering what it would take to enforce its position. Military planners have explored scenarios in which American forces could physically seize Iran's uranium stockpile. Such an operation would be extraordinarily complex, involving special forces, technical experts, and extensive logistical coordination. It would likely require entry into heavily fortified underground facilities, many of which are designed specifically to withstand attacks. Experts warn that any attempt to carry out such an operation would carry enormous risks. It could involve thousands of troops, prolonged engagement, and a high likelihood of casualties. More importantly, it could trigger a broader regional war, drawing in other countries and escalating tensions far beyond the current conflict. Despite these risks, the option remains on the table. U.S. officials have made it clear that while diplomacy is preferred, military action has not been ruled out. The uranium is being closely monitored, and Washington continues to push for a negotiated solution. But the message is clear. There is a limit to how long the United States is willing to wait. The current ceasefire provides a narrow window for diplomacy, but it is far from stable. The agreement includes a temporary halt in hostilities, the reopening of critical shipping routes, and a short period for negotiations aimed at reaching a longer-term settlement. One of the key elements of the ceasefire is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global energy route through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes. During the conflict, disruptions in this area raised fears of a global economic crisis. Although the ceasefire has allowed some movement of oil shipments to resume, the situation remains uncertain. Iran continues to exert control over the strait, and shipping operations are still subject to restrictions and approvals. Oil markets have responded cautiously. Prices have dropped slightly following the ceasefire, but they remain elevated compared to pre-war levels, reflecting ongoing uncertainty and risk. Meanwhile, violence is not completely stopped. Conflicts involving Iran-aligned groups continue in different parts of the region. In Lebanon, fighting has intensified, with attacks and counterattacks occurring outside the scope of the ceasefire. This highlights a critical issue. The ceasefire is limited in scope and does not address the broader network of conflicts connected to Iran. As a result, even if the agreement holds between the United States and Iran, the wider region remains unstable. At the same time, both sides are using the ceasefire to shape public perception. The United States presents the pause as a result of its military strength, arguing that Iran was forced into negotiations after suffering significant losses. Iran counters this narrative by emphasizing resilience and survival. Officials argue that the country has withstood external pressure and maintained its independence. This battle of narratives is not just about perception, it is about leverage. Each side is trying to strengthen its position ahead of negotiations, shaping both domestic and international opinion. Diplomatic efforts are continuing, with talks expected to take place under international mediation. Pakistan has played a key role in facilitating dialogue, providing a platform for discussions at a time when direct communication between Washington and Tehran remains limited. The goal of these talks is to reach a comprehensive agreement that addresses nuclear concerns, regional stability, and economic issues. However, the challenges are immense. Trust between the two sides is extremely low. Years of conflict, sanctions, and failed negotiations have created deep skepticism on both sides. Each move is viewed with suspicion, making compromise difficult. At the same time, the timeline is short, the ceasefire is temporary, and there is no guarantee that it will be extended. If negotiations fail, the risk of renewed conflict is very high. The stakes are not limited to the United States and Iran. The outcome of this standoff could have far-reaching consequences for the entire world. The Middle East is a critical region for global energy supply, and any disruption can have immediate economic impacts. A renewed conflict could drive oil prices higher, disrupt supply chains, and trigger economic instability in multiple countries. Beyond economics, the nuclear issue carries significant security implications.
If Iran retains its enriched uranium, it could alter the strategic balance in the region, potentially triggering an arms race. Other countries might pursue their own nuclear capabilities in response, increasing the risk of proliferation. On the other hand, if the United States attempts to seize the uranium by force, it could set a dangerous precedent.
Such an action could escalate into a broader conflict involving multiple countries and potentially leading to a prolonged and devastating war. The situation is further complicated by internal pressures within both countries. In the United States, the conflict has sparked political debate, with supporters praising strong action and critics warning of the risks of escalation. In Iran, leaders must balance external pressure with domestic expectations, maintaining a strong stance while avoiding further damage. This combination of internal and external pressures makes the situation even more unpredictable. As the ceasefire continues, all eyes are on the next steps. Will Iran agree to hand over its uranium? Will the United States continue to push for a diplomatic solution? Or will the situation escalate once again, leading to renewed conflict? At this moment, there are no clear answers. What is clear, however, is that the current situation represents a critical turning point. The warning issued by the United States has transformed the uranium issue from a long-standing concern into an immediate and urgent challenge. It has raised the stakes, narrowed the options, and increased the pressure on all sides. The coming days and weeks will be decisive. If diplomacy succeeds, it could lead to a new phase of stability and cooperation. If it fails, the consequences could be severe, not just for the United States and Iran, but for the entire world. For now, uncertainty dominates. The ceasefire holds, but barely. Negotiations continue, but with difficulty, and the threat of escalation remains ever present. The world is watching closely, aware that the next move could change everything.